The screaming didn't stop when I locked the door. That was the first thing that broke me. Not the sound itself, but the fact that it didn't change. No words, no breaths, just the same raw, sustained noise, like his lungs didn't need oxygen anymore. I was pressed against the office wall, phone clenched in my hand, staring at the handle as it twisted again. Slow, careful, like he was testing how much force it would take before the lock failed. I remember thinking, very clearly, this door was never meant to stop someone who doesn't care about pain. The handle stopped moving. The screaming cut off mid-sound, like someone had flicked a switch. That silence was worse. I didn't move. I couldn't. My legs had gone numb, and my back was slick with sweat. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, whispering to the dispatcher that he was still there, that I could feel him on the other side of the door, even though I couldn't hear him anymore. She told me to stay put. I didn't tell her the lock was shaking again. This time, it wasn't violent. It was gentle, almost curious. The door clicked. Not opened, clicked. Like someone testing whether it was still secured. That's when I realized something was wrong in a way I couldn't explain. He wasn't trying to get in anymore. He was waiting. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Time didn't move correctly. I remember staring at the security monitor mounted above the desk, watching the hallway feed refresh every few seconds. Nothing. No movement. No man. No blood. Just an empty hallway lit by flickering fluorescent lights. My phone vibrated in my hand as the dispatcher asked if I was still there. I answered too fast, my voice cracking, telling her yes, he was here. He had been screaming. He was bleeding. She stopped me. She asked me to describe him again. I tried. I really did. But the details slipped away the more I talked. Tall, thin, long hair, bare feet. That should have been enough. Then she asked something I wasn't expecting. Did he scan a key card when he entered? I told her I didn't know. She told me to check the system. I didn't want to. I didn't want to look away from the hallway camera. But she insisted, said it could help officers identify him. So I turned to the computer. The access log was still open from earlier. Every entry and exit was time-stamped. Clean. Organized. I scrolled. Nothing after 11:17 p.m. No entry at 1:40. No exit. No scan at all. I told her that. She didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice had changed. She told me officers were already en route. She told me to stay locked in the office. She told me not to leave under any circumstances, even if I thought he was gone. I asked her why. She didn't answer. The treadmill was still running. I noticed it on the monitor while we were talking. The camera angle showed the far corner of the gym floor. The belt was moving at full speed. Empty. Slick with something dark that reflected the overhead lights. The time display was frozen. 00. I stared at it longer than I should have. Something about that number made my stomach turn. Machines didn't do that. They timed out. They shut off automatically after inactivity. This one hadn't. I asked the dispatcher if she could see the camera feed. She said no. I told her there was blood everywhere. She told me not to look at it. That was when the lights dimmed. Not off, just lower, like the building was breathing out. The hallway monitor flickered. For a split second, the screen warped, static, distortion. And then the image snapped back into place. He was standing there again, closer, right in front of the office door. His face was tilted upward now, eyes fixed on the camera lens. His mouth was open, stretched too wide, jaw trembling slightly like he was trying to hold something back. He wasn't screaming anymore. He was smiling. I made a sound then. I don't know what it was. The dispatcher heard it and asked what was happening, but I couldn't form words. I just stared at the screen, watching him raise one hand slowly until his fingers brushed the door. Not grabbing, touching, like he was reassuring himself that it was real. He leaned forward until his forehead rested against the glass pane in the door. The skin there was smeared red. I realized then that it wasn't just his feet that were injured. He was covered in shallow cuts, scratches, raw patches of skin like he'd been rubbing himself against something rough for a long time. His lips moved. No sound came through the feed, but I could read it. Too slow. The handle turned again. The lock held. For now. The dispatcher told me to put the phone down and focus on my breathing. I told her I couldn't. She asked me how long I'd worked there. I didn't understand why that mattered, but I answered anyway. Almost a year. Mostly nights. She went quiet again. Then she asked if I'd ever noticed anything strange before. I thought about lying. Instead, I told her about the complaints. The late-night members who said the treadmills sometimes started on their own. The reports of blood that maintenance could never find. The one guy who asked me if we'd change the hours because he kept hearing running after closing announcements. I told her about the message someone left on the front desk one morning. It doesn't stop if you stop. I hadn't understood it then. I did now. The man lifted his head. He stepped back from the door, still smiling, and raised his voice for the first time since the screaming stopped. "Listen," he said calmly. His voice sounded normal now. Too normal. I tried to tell the last one. I shook my head violently, even though he couldn't see me. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." He tilted his head, confused. "You can hear it, right?" he asked. Under everything, I could. I hadn't realized it until he said it, but the building had a low vibration now. A constant mechanical sound beneath the silence, like thousands of moving parts just out of sync. "I ran until it quieted down," he continued. "That's what they told me to do." My phone slipped from my ear and hit the floor. The dispatcher was still talking, but I couldn't focus on her words anymore. "They said if I kept moving, it wouldn't notice me," he said. "But I stopped." His smile faded. "And now it's your turn." The lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the gym in dim red strips along the floor. The hallway monitor switched to night vision automatically, turning everything a sickly green. He was gone. Not walked away. Gone. I screamed then. I couldn't help it. The dispatcher was shouting my name through the phone, telling me officers were pulling into the lot, telling me to stay where I was. I didn't believe her. I didn't believe anyone was coming, because I could hear it now. Running, not footsteps. Machines. All of them. Every treadmill in the building powered on at once. The sound was deafening. Belts spinning, motors whining. The entire gym came alive in a way it never had before. I watched the monitors in horror as empty machines began moving at full speed, one after another, like something was testing them. The dispatcher was screaming for me to leave the office and get out of the building. I told her the doors were locked after hours. She told me to break the glass if I had to. I stood up on shaking legs and moved toward the door, heart pounding so hard it hurt. That's when I saw him again. He was on a treadmill, not running, standing, facing me. Blood pooled beneath his feet, but he didn't seem to notice. He raised one finger. "Don't," he mouthed. The machine beneath him lurched. He stumbled, and then he started running again. I understood then. The fear wasn't him. It was the choice. I backed away from the door. The dispatcher begged me to keep moving, but I couldn't. Because I knew if I left that office, if I stepped onto that floor, I'd have to keep moving forever. The man on the treadmill screamed again, but this time it wasn't rage or pain. It was warning. The lights flickered. The machine screamed louder. And somewhere beneath it all, I felt something shift, something realizing it had been noticed. The police arrived minutes later. They found me unconscious behind the desk. They never found him. They never found the blood. They never found any record that he was there. But the gym shut down permanently 3 weeks later. Electrical issues, they said. I don't work nights anymore, and I don't stop moving when I hear the hum.